Billionaire pretends to sleep to test Black Maid's kid. What happens next shocks him. It was late into the night, and the CEO's office in the towering glass building was bathed in an eerie silence. The city lights outside flickered through the window as Mariah, a 28-year-old Black woman, quietly stepped inside the room, carrying her cleaning supplies. She had worked these night shifts for the past 2 years, long hours, always on her feet. Her second job, the one she took to provide for her 8-year-old son, Elijah. But tonight was different. What she didn't know was that this night would change everything. Before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. Trust me, this story is about to take a turn that will leave you speechless. Watch until the end to see how this story of integrity, transformation, dignity, justice, and the power of doing what's right unfolds. In the far corner of the room, in his custom leather chair, sat William Archer, a billionaire who had built his empire from the ground up. A ruthless businessman, successful but jaded, watching the world through a lens of distrust. His empire had been built on hard work, yes, but also a cold, calculated approach. His latest scandal had proven to him that people couldn't be trusted, not even those closest to him. His own brother had embezzled millions from him. And now, William had set a test. He had planned it all out. Leave the safe wide open, filled with piles of cash. A fortune just sitting there as a test. He wanted to know if anyone at all, could resist the temptation. Mariah, unaware, began her shift like any other. She started cleaning the polished floors, moving quietly and diligently, her routine so familiar it was almost second nature. Elijah, her son, was with her as usual, seated on a chair near the office door, quietly drawing with crayons. William, his eyes barely open, watched them both from across the room. His gaze shifted from Mariah to the safe. His breath slowed, knowing that anyone who saw that money would be tempted to take it. And then, it happened. Elijah, his little fingers clutching his crayons, noticed the open safe. His small eyes locked onto the piles of cash inside. William held his breath. For a moment, it seemed like Elijah might reach for the money. But then, he didn't. Instead, the young boy walked over to the safe, his tiny feet making no sound as he carefully approached. Without hesitation, he began to straighten the disorganized stacks of bills, one by one, carefully aligning them and stacking them with the precision of a professional. Elijah didn't touch the money to take it. No, he arranged it. His small hands worked delicately, as if he were handling something sacred. "Mommy," Elijah whispered, "Mr. Archer's money's all messy. I fixed it, just like you taught me to do with my toys." Mariah turned quickly, startled. "Elijah, don't touch Mr. Archer's things," she said with concern. But Elijah only looked up with innocent eyes and smiled. "It's okay, Mommy. I just want him to be happy when he wakes up. His money's all messy." Mariah stood there, frozen. William sat completely still, a lump forming in his throat. Here was a child who had never known what it was to have wealth, never seen more than a few dollars in his hands. Yet he treated the money with more respect than anyone else ever had. The billionaire felt something stir in him, something long buried. Admiration, perhaps, or guilt. The test wasn't about the money. It wasn't about who would take it. It was about who would respect it. Elijah, without even thinking, had shown him the kind of integrity he had lost long ago. The next few weeks, William couldn't shake the image of Elijah carefully arranging the cash. He began to pay closer attention to Mariah and Elijah, observing them from a distance. What he discovered left him both astonished and moved. Mariah was a single mother, raising Elijah with nothing but her own strength and determination. She worked double shifts, at night, cleaning his office, and in the mornings, cleaning a doctor's office. Elijah, like the quiet, hard-working boy he was, sat by her side, doing his homework or playing quietly while she worked. But what struck William the most was the way Mariah taught Elijah. One evening, he overheard her softly speaking to him as they sat together for dinner. "We never take what isn't ours, Elijah, even if no one is watching. And our honesty, our pride, is more valuable than anything in this world." The words resonated with William, who had spent years building his empire with little regard for honesty or kindness. He had always been surrounded by people who wanted something from him. But here was Mariah, working 2 jobs, never asking for anything, and teaching her son lessons about integrity. lessons that William had long forgotten. But that lesson wasn't enough to shield her from the corporate world's ugliness. A financial discrepancy was uncovered at the company, and William felt the pressure of fixing it. In his mind, it was simple: find someone to blame. Someone easy, someone who wouldn't fight back. And it didn't take long before he turned his attention to Mariah. His trusted vice president, Jonathan Hayes, suggested something that would make William's blood run cold. William, this woman, Mariah, she's a liability. You've been too kind to her. She doesn't belong here. You should make an example of her. Jonathan's words echoed through William's mind as he saw Mariah at work, the same woman who had shown him the true value of humanity. Yet, he couldn't ignore the temptation to silence her, to control her, and to prove that people like her didn't belong in his world. But when he saw Mariah's struggle to make ends meet and her unwavering commitment to raising Elijah with dignity, William couldn't go through with it. He ordered an internal investigation, but this time, he made sure it wasn't a simple witch hunt. He dug deeper, uncovering her remarkable financial responsibility and her donations to community programs. Mariah wasn't taking anything that wasn't hers. Instead, she was giving. William, moved by her integrity, did something he never expected. He stood up to Jonathan Hayes, fired him, and cleared Mariah's name. But that was only the beginning. Mariah was invited back to the office, but this time, it wasn't to clean. William, with a clear conscience for the first time in years, offered her a position in his company. "Mariah, I was wrong about you," he said. "I see now that you've shown me the kind of person I've been searching for." Mariah was named Chief Operations Manager, a role that not only elevated her, but also opened doors for Elijah. In the months that followed, the company's policies began to change. It became more inclusive, more diverse, and focused on community development. William found himself advocating for the very things he had once overlooked. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. Jonathan Hayes wasn't done. He began a campaign of intimidation, trying to undermine Mariah at every turn. He plotted against her, scheming in the shadows, hoping to bring her down. He was determined to prove that people like Mariah didn't belong in this world. But this time, William wasn't just standing by. He had been changed by Mariah's honesty, by her quiet strength, and he would not allow her to be destroyed. William Archer sat in his office, the weight of his decisions pressing on him. The past few weeks had been a blur of change, not only for the company, but for himself. He had seen his empire transform from a cold, profit-driven machine into something more meaningful, something human. But as much as things had changed, there was still one shadow lingering over him: Jonathan Hayes. The former vice president had been plotting against Mariah, and William knew it was only a matter of time before he tried to make his move. The notes, the hidden meetings, the whispers in the corridors. William could feel the tension mounting. Mariah, now the chief operations manager, had settled into her new role with grace and dignity. Her influence in the company was undeniable. But even in the face of adversity, she carried herself with a quiet strength, the same strength she had passed down to her son, Elijah. Yet, despite all the progress, something gnawed at William. Jonathan Hayes was not the kind of man to accept defeat. He wouldn't go down quietly. And then, it happened. Late one evening, just as Mariah was leaving for her shift, William saw her, as usual, with Elijah in tow, walking out into the parking lot. But this time, there was someone waiting for her. A car pulled up in the shadows, its headlights glaring across the lot. William squinted, trying to make out the figures in the car. It was Jonathan, with a group of men William didn't recognize. They were all too calm, too composed. He knew this wasn't a casual encounter. His pulse quickened. Mariah stepped closer to the car, Elijah clutching her hand. "Mommy, why are they here?" Elijah asked, his innocent voice filled with confusion. "Stay behind me, Elijah," Mariah whispered, her protective instincts kicking in. She tried to shield her son with her body, but deep down, she knew this wasn't going to end well. Jonathan Hayes stepped out of the car, his smug expression making William's blood boil. "Mariah," he said, his voice cold. "We need to talk." Mariah stood firm. "There's nothing to talk about, Jonathan. You've already said everything you needed to." William, watching from the office window, felt the surge of anger rise within him. He was no longer the man who would sit idly by. He wasn't going to let Jonathan drag Mariah and her son back into the shadows of corporate manipulation. But before he could take action, he saw something that made his heart stop. Jonathan reached into his jacket, pulling out a folder. "You've been getting too comfortable, Mariah. I know about your little scheme. And now, you'll have to answer for it. I've got the proof. You've been embezzling from the company." Mariah's face hardened. "You're lying." Jonathan's smirk grew. "You don't want to try me, Mariah. I've got enough to bury you and your precious little job here. You think William will protect you? He's too busy making a fool of himself to notice what's happening under his nose. If you don't leave now, I'll make sure you and your son regret it." Mariah's heart raced, but she stood tall, refusing to back down. She opened her mouth to respond, but suddenly, a voice broke through the tension, William's voice, coming from the doorway. "That's enough, Jonathan." Everyone turned to look at him. William's presence was like a storm cloud rolling in, dark, heavy, and full of determination. He stepped out into the parking lot, his face hard, his posture resolute. "I don't want to hear another word from you. Leave. Now." Jonathan's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "You think you've won, William? You think you've fixed everything by giving that woman a title? You're playing with fire, and soon enough, you'll get burned." William's eyes narrowed. "I don't play games, Jonathan. You've crossed a line. It's over." But just as William turned to walk back to the office, Jonathan shouted after him, "You think I'll be the one to burn? You're wrong, William. It's you. It's always been you." The words echoed in the night air, a warning William could not ignore. As the night dragged on, William couldn't shake the sense of impending danger. Jonathan was dangerous, but there was something more to his words. He had something, a secret that William didn't understand yet. He sat back in his office, watching the security footage, hoping to find something, anything that could explain what Jonathan was planning. And then he saw it. A series of encrypted emails sent from Jonathan's account, emails William had never seen before. Suddenly, everything clicked. Jonathan wasn't just angry. He wasn't just trying to frame Mariah. He was planning something far worse. The next day, Mariah was summoned to the boardroom for a meeting that would change everything. Jonathan, with his usual smug expression, stood at the head of the table. "This is it," he said, his voice sharp. "The moment we expose the truth about Mariah Jefferson and her so-called rise to power." William, standing in the doorway, felt his heart race. He could see the trap Jonathan had set. But before he could react, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The board members, the very people he thought he could trust, were not looking at Mariah. They were looking at him. One by one, the board members' eyes shifted to William. He felt their eyes burning into him. And then, with a single sentence, everything changed. "We think it's time for a change, Mr. Archer," the chairperson said. "The company needs new leadership." The air in the boardroom was thick with tension. William Archer stood frozen at the doorway, his mind racing. Every ounce of confidence he once had seemed to drain from his body as he looked at the board members, their faces now indifferent, almost cold. The words they had just spoken lingered in the air like a bitter taste. "We think it's time for a change, Mr. Archer," the chairperson, Marla Langford, said, her voice calculated and unwavering. "The company needs new leadership. It's no secret that you've been distracted, and while your intentions have been noble, it's clear that you've lost control." William felt the weight of those words, as if the ground beneath him was giving way. He had spent years building this empire, but now, in a matter of seconds, it felt as if everything was slipping through his fingers. He glanced around the table, seeing the cold, calculating faces of the board members. All of them were looking at him with a mixture of disdain and disappointment. Jonathan Hayes, standing at the opposite end of the room, offered a smug smile. "You see, William," he said, his tone dripping with satisfaction. "People like you can't survive in a world like this. You've lost touch. You've let emotions cloud your judgment. And now, you'll have to face the consequences." Mariah Jefferson, seated at the far end of the table, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had witnessed the entire exchange, her heart heavy with the weight of what was happening. William had given her a chance that no one else would have. But now, with the board turning against him, she wasn't sure if there was anything she could do to save him. For a moment, the room was silent. Then, with a sharp exhale, William broke the stillness. "You can't do this. Not without proof. You're making a mistake. I've built this company with my blood, sweat, and tears, and I'm not going to let you tear it apart just because you're angry." Marla's eyes narrowed. It's not about anger, William. It's about the future of the company. And frankly, we don't believe you're the right person to lead us anymore. You've allowed your personal biases and emotions to get in the way of good business. William's hands clenched into fists, but he knew better than to lash out. His mind was spinning, trying to come up with a way to fight back, but every avenue seemed blocked. Jonathan had made his move, and now, it seemed like the board was backing him. Then what? William asked, his voice low, almost resigned. You think Jonathan is the answer? He's the one who's been trying to destroy Mariah. He's the one who's been manipulating everyone in this room. Jonathan's smile widened, and he took a step forward. You've lost, William. It's over. William's heart pounded in his chest. But then, a flicker of hope ignited inside him. He wasn't going to go down without a fight. He looked at Mariah, whose face was still filled with a quiet strength. Marla, he said, his voice gaining strength, I'm not finished yet. Marla raised an eyebrow. And what exactly are you planning to do, William? With a determined breath, William turned and walked out of the room, not waiting for anyone to follow. He knew he had only one chance to save himself, to take back control. As he made his way to his office, his mind raced with possibilities. He needed more evidence. He needed to find something that could expose Jonathan for what he truly was. As he entered his office, William immediately turned to his desk, pulling out the confidential files he had kept hidden for years. It was time to uncover the truth, once and for all. Hours later, as the sun began to set, William's pulse quickened as he found what he was looking for: a series of emails, communications between Jonathan and several high-ranking officials from rival companies. The contents of the emails were damning, showing clear evidence of Jonathan's involvement in corporate espionage, bribery, and attempts to undermine the very foundation of William's company. But just as he was about to call his lawyer, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Mariah. We need to talk. It's about Jonathan. Meet me at the usual place in 1 hour. William's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what she had uncovered, but he knew it was important. He grabbed his coat and rushed out of the office, determined to confront the man who had already destroyed so much. The usual place was a quiet cafe, a place where Mariah and William had often met to discuss company matters when no one was looking. It was always neutral ground, a place where they could speak freely. When William arrived, he spotted Mariah sitting at a corner booth, her eyes scanning the room nervously. He quickly walked over and sat down across from her. Mariah, he said, his voice low, what's going on? What have you found? Mariah looked around cautiously before leaning in. It's worse than we thought. Jonathan, he's been working with people from outside the company, people who want to take it down from the inside. He's been selling company secrets for years, and I have proof. But that's not all, William. There's something bigger at play here. Something dangerous. William's mind raced. What do you mean? What's going on? Mariah took a deep breath. I found out that Jonathan has been planning something far more sinister. He's not just after your company. He's been using his position to manipulate people, to destroy lives. And now, he's targeting you, William. He knows what you found. He's coming after you. William's heart sank. The feeling of dread was back, heavier than ever. What do we do now? He asked. Mariah looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. We fight back. We expose him before he has a chance to destroy us. But just as they were about to make a plan, the door to the cafe opened with a loud bang. William turned to see a familiar face, Jonathan Hayes, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. His eyes locked with William's, and a sinister smile curled on his lips. I told you, William, Jonathan said coldly. It's over. You and your little cleaner here, you're nothing but pawns. You'll never win. The air in the cafe felt like it had frozen. Jonathan Hayes, standing tall and smug at the entrance with his 2 hired men, looked like a predator savoring its prey. The tension was palpable, thickening the space around them. William's heart pounded in his chest, but there was no fear, only resolve. This was it, the final showdown. Jonathan's voice cut through the silence like a blade. I gave you a chance, William. I tried to warn you, but now it's too late. You can't fix this. Your company, your life, it's all mine now. Mariah's hand trembled as she reached for her purse, but William's eyes were locked on Jonathan, his mind calculating the next move. The man was dangerous, ruthless, and willing to destroy anyone in his path to keep his secrets safe. But what Jonathan didn't realize was that William had already taken steps to protect everything that mattered. Jonathan took a step forward, his men flanking him. You really think you've won, William? You think you can expose me with your little files? You have no idea what you're up against. You're nothing but a fool playing in a game you'll never understand. William stood, his voice calm but firm. I understand more than you think. I've seen the damage you've caused. I know about the bribery, the espionage, the lies. And I have everything I need to bring you down, Jonathan. It's over. Jonathan laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound. You think a few documents will stop me? I've covered my tracks. I've made sure no one will believe you. I'll bury you before you can even speak. Mariah, ever the silent warrior, met William's gaze. Her eyes were steady, unwavering, filled with a quiet strength that only someone who had fought for survival could possess. William knew then that he couldn't do this alone. This wasn't just about his company anymore. It was about justice, about standing up for the people who had been wronged, for the lives destroyed by greed and corruption. The door to the cafe swung open again, and to everyone's surprise, Sandra Miller, the former HR director, walked in. She was no longer the silent observer she once was. Her face was set with determination, and in her hand, she held a folder filled with the evidence that had been hidden for so long. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Jonathan, Sandra said, her voice steady. I've seen enough. I've been complicit in your lies, but not anymore. Jonathan's smirk faltered, his eyes flickering with something close to fear. You're making a mistake. You can't expose me. I have too many connections. Too many people in my corner. Sandra dropped the folder on the table. Your connections are about to become your downfall. We've been watching you for months, Jonathan. Every lie you've told, every backroom deal you've made, it's all documented. Jonathan's face twisted in anger. You think you've won? You're nothing. You'll regret this. But before he could say another word, the door opened once more. This time, it was the police, led by Detective Harris, who had been investigating Jonathan for weeks, building a case based on the very evidence William and Sandra had gathered. The officers moved swiftly, surrounding Jonathan and his men. Jonathan Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, embezzlement, and racial discrimination, Detective Harris said, his voice unwavering. Jonathan tried to resist, but it was too late. The walls had closed in around him. He had underestimated everyone, especially William and Mariah. The reality of his downfall hit him like a ton of bricks as he was cuffed and let out of the cafe. Mariah turned to William, her expression softening. You did it. You exposed him. William nodded, but there was no smugness in his demeanor, no sense of victory. Only relief. We did it. But it's not about him. It's about the people who don't have a voice. The ones who get stepped on while people like him profit. It's about justice. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan Hayes was prosecuted and convicted. The evidence William and Mariah had gathered, combined with the support of those who had witnessed Jonathan's crimes, ensured that his empire of lies crumbled. William, though, didn't stop there. The changes began to ripple throughout the company. Policies were rewritten. Leadership positions were restructured. And for the first time in years, the company's culture shifted toward integrity, transparency, and inclusion. Mariah's promotion was just the beginning. William had taken it upon himself to create new opportunities for people like her, people who had been overlooked, people who had fought hard for dignity and respect. But the most significant change was in the heart of the company's values. William finally understood that true success wasn't measured by profits alone. It was measured by the people you lifted up, the lives you changed, and the legacy you left behind. And Elijah? Elijah grew up with a sense of pride, knowing that his mother had fought for what was right. He had seen firsthand that doing the right thing wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. His dreams of becoming a lawyer grew even more, inspired by the courage his mother and William had shown. William stood in the boardroom one last time, addressing the team. What we've done here isn't just about business. It's about doing right by the people who trusted us. We've learned that our true strength lies not in the wealth we accumulate, but in the justice we serve. And I'll never forget that. Mariah stood beside him, her smile warm and full of hope. She had risen, not just as an employee, but as a symbol of the kind of change that was possible when integrity and compassion guided your actions. The moral lesson of this story is simple. Integrity, dignity, and justice are the true markers of success. No matter how powerful or wealthy someone may be, it is our ability to stand up for what is right, to fight for those who have been overlooked, that defines us. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of transformation, justice, and the power of doing what's right. Thank you for watching.